Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to the Poker Face Recap Podcast, where every week I dive into the world of the Peacock hit series, Poker Face. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and I'm excited to break down each episode of this character-driven murder mystery series. No bullshit. So sit back, relax, crack open a tall can of your favorite beer, and let's get started on the wild ride with Charlie Cale as she solves murders across the United States. In this episode, I'm talking about episode 3, season 1, episode 3, The Stall. This episode came out along with all the other earlier episodes, January 26, 2023. This one was directed by Ian B. McDonald. So the first episode so far, not directed by Rian Johnson. This episode was written by Rian Johnson as well as Wyatt Kane, who is Wyatt Kane is the executive story editor, and Charlie Peppers is the main story editor. This episode guest stars Lil Rel Howery, Danielle McDonald, Shane Paul McGee, and Larry Brown. In this episode, we have a four-legged fascist hitchhiker joins Charlie on her trip. As any good detective, Charlie finds clues right under her nose as she sniffs out the bullshit in this episode, and she uncovers the truth behind a suicide at a family-run Texas barbecue. This episode starts with one of our main characters, the victim, I should say, in this episode, George, watching the sunrise, crying, going down, opens up his smoker where he's got this juicy meat smoking, and he gets down on his knees and cries, and you hear a voice over his shoulder. Sounds like Charlie. Later we find out it's Charlie. She says his name, and he looks and tells her that he's a murderer. Obviously, kind of throwing you off, thinking that maybe he is the one who commits the murder in this episode. Cut to, we see his brother, Taffy Boyle, on the phone talking about some loans that he's dealing with, clearly in some money problems. And then followed up, he gets a call from the bank. He's got this whole idea. They run a barbecue place in Texas. He has this dental floss promotion that he does, the cinnamon dental floss that he goes and tells everybody that's eating, don't forget to we put the meat in your teeth and you take it out, which is kind of a good marketing gimmick in some way, but has some critics as well. And we also see that his sister-in-law is also, George's wife, is also part of this barbecue joint. And George is upset over the thought of animals that give their lives. That's what we find out he's crying about. He wants to get out of the business, right? He had a change of heart, wants to go vegan, right? Despite him being a renowned pitmaster, right? The guy who makes the amazing food of this restaurant. He all of a sudden has this awakening where he no longer wants to participate in the slaughtering of these animals. Despite clearly having a lot of respect for the animals, which we find out later. But he wants to go vegan, so we kind of find out what he's crying about, right? He had this awakening, opens the smoker outside of his trailer and sees the dead flesh on it, and he's just like, I can't believe I'm doing this, right? Of course, his brother Taffy doesn't want this to happen, right? The guy who is the key to making the food good. Taffy may have some fun promotional ideas, but at the heart of it, it's the meat and how it's prepared, and all of that. So he's not very happy. Taffy's desperate. He's a desperate man, and the fact that he's got these mounting bills clearly. So it's not the best time for his brother to jump ship and leave this business, right? And Taffy confides in his sister-in-law, Mandy, married to George, right? Cut to Taffy in his truck, seemingly we get the shot of him from behind. Seemingly it sounds like he's loading a gun, right? Somebody that desperate, not happy with his brother. We know there's a murder. Sounds like he's loading a gun. Cut to, we see that he was actually putting batteries in a well-known piece of equipment. If you are a podcaster or have been a podcaster, he's loading batteries into a Zoom H4n Pro, right, to record some audio. And we see him talking into the recorder, talking about his brother George and his talents with meat. Right? We don't really know what that's for yet. And then he goes to share a beer with George after he records his thing, walks over to George's trailer. He's got 2 beers, gives him one. They're reminiscing about the axe that's sitting over by the wood pile, that they used to have wood splitting competitions when they were kids. And George tells Taffy how, right, it's really just him and Mandy who built this business, right? It's not really him. Right, you've got the radio show that's doing well, the promotional floss. Like, you guys are the real engine behind this thing that's going on, trying to make him feel better about leaving the business. And as Taffy walks away, right, they share their beer, whatever. Not share a beer, but they both have their own beer. But as Taffy walks away, back towards the restaurant, back towards the barbecue place, He yells at the patrons to give a shout out to George, right? Let's give it up for George as he's walking back, really putting a show. Really, you see that Taffy is doing a lot of these things for a reason. He has ulterior motives, right? Cut to later that night, right? Taffy has this radio show. He's almost late for his radio show. And Mandy, who's working the restaurant, calls into the radio show. They got the radio show playing on the loudspeaker, the PA system at the place. Radio station is right across the street from this barbecue pit, right? So he just still drives across the street, but gets there. Meanwhile, you see Taffy gets into the radio booth, right? The other guy comes out, gives him some barbecue. He's like, here, eat this while I'm doing my thing. Close the door, flips the light on, the on-air light, whatever. Goes in. You see him while he's on the phone with Mandy. She calls in, talking about the sausage, queuing him up. You see Taffy plug in a little thumb drive, USB thumb drive. You see him going to open up a file, an audio file, and we find out that that's the recording that he made while in his truck, talking about how his brother George makes the sausage. The story perfectly teed up by Mandy, who's in the restaurant, right? Let's talk about this sausage. And then he's like, well, let me tell you about my... So he turns on this recording, right? He turns there's like a switch that makes it go from... that turns the microphone off to make sure it's not hot. Because as this recording that he did is playing, you see Taffy sneak out the window. You see him run over, cross the street to George's trailer. You see him putting on little rubber gloves. Little nefarious stuff going on right now, right? He goes inside George's trailer. George is passed out, right? Clearly, whatever was in that beer took effect. He is passed out on the floor. Taffy grabs the bottle, the beer bottle, washes it out, right? Whatever was in there, doesn't want any evidence, no traces left. And as he leaves, kind of a brilliant move, he uses the dental floss as a way to latch on to the lock of the trailer and then be able to close the trailer, pull the lock closed, and then let the floss slide back out. So it looks like George locked himself in the trailer. And before he did that, he opened up or closed the windows except for one window, right? And then he gets a hose, right? Puts the hose, one end of the hose in the trailer, goes over to his car, George's car, I would imagine, that's parked right next to the trailer, to hook up, obviously, to the tailpipe, and finds out that it's an electric car. This is one aspect of this episode that I call bullshit. In a show that calls bullshit, I call bullshit. You're telling me that a family-run barbecue place in Texas, they don't know that their brother purchased an electric vehicle. In Texas, barbecue bullshit. Not only would they know that he bought an electric vehicle, but it probably would have been the subject of much shit talking if that had happened in real life in Texas at a barbecue. You're telling me his brother, his sister, every single person that eats at that barbecue would just not even notice that this guy bought an electric vehicle, right? Don't buy that whatsoever. But makes for a funny moment where he goes and he's like, shit. He looks up and he sees that it's a Nissan Leaf, which probably maybe some product placement, maybe Nissan paid to have their car there. But I don't buy that he didn't realize that his brother drove an electric car. Either way, can't hook up a hose to the exhaust because there is no exhaust, so instead he hooks it up to the smoker. Which is kind of like, I don't really understand. I mean, I understand even modern cars, I don't think, put out enough exhaust that could actually kill a person, even though it's like something, I think older cars you could do that, but I don't think that can still work because cars are so much more efficient. They don't put out as much exhaust. Nobody tests this theory out, but I believe the idea that you can commit suicide by hooking a hose up to the exhaust of a modern car, it produces enough carbon monoxide to kill you. And even furthermore, hooking it up to a smoker, I don't know how that could kill him. Obviously, the smoke wouldn't be good. For sure, damage his lungs. Maybe, I guess, maybe it could kill him. I guess. I don't know. But I'm going along with this show, because obviously that is how George is getting got. Because his brother Taffy, dirtbag brother Taffy, played by Lil Rel Howery, hooks up the hose to the smoker, right? Let's see. So while he's doing that, there's this little dog comes from out nowhere, right? Comes up barking at him, kind of, giving up his spot, kind of potentially letting people who are at the restaurant that's within shouting distance, could be, giving away a spot. So in an effort to silence the dog, Taffy bludgeons the dog with a log, and then throws the log into the fire for the smoker to hide that evidence, right? So clubs the dog. He moves the body of the dog to the road, so it looks like the dog was hit by a car. And then you have Mandy clearly in on it, right? Because she's got a timer counting down on her watch, which is, we see also a timer on Taffy's watch, right? To indicate when the recording is going to be up, right? This is all in an effort to give him an alibi for why this is happening. So Taffy gets back to the radio station, forgets to flip the mic back on. So when he tries to go live, oh, I'm back. Well, that was a lot of fun. Let's take another call, whatever. He forgets to do it. So there's a moment of dead air, which I don't think that ever happens, but it does signify the lack of evidence, the lack of something is definitely part of how this mystery is uncovered, when things that should be there are missing. And in one way, him missing to hit record or to put the mic back on live is one of the many things that is missing that indicates that things aren't as they seem. So Taffy takes the USB drive. He has a bandana that he wipes the mud off of his boots, his cowboy boots, right? and tosses both of those things into one of the fires of the smoker at the restaurant when he returns to the restaurant, right after his broadcast is over. Cut to our hero, Charlie, the next day. As all of these episodes are structured, we get in the first act of the episode, we get the crime. We see how the crime is committed. And then the second act, we get to see how Charlie figures in. Where was she while all this was going on? Because she is always in the background. We just never see her. In this episode, we did get to hear her at the very beginning of the episode, but we don't know how she fits into this whole thing. So we see Charlie. She's at a gas station getting some supplies, some food, whatever, snacks, gas probably as well. And we see our four-legged fascist jump into her car. The dog jumps into her car, refusing to get out of the car, annoying, won't stop barking, attacks her when she goes to go pick it up. So it is a violent and annoying and loud dog. Very much all of the traits of a fascist. Just loud and annoying and violent if provoked, which is kind of hilarious. Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/inspired disorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/inspired disorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show. So she tries to use the squeegee, doesn't help, right? She tries to leave pork rinds on the thing to lure the dog out, doesn't help. And it's just this annoying little terrier. Won't start barking, bites her. It not only does it bark, it also, she decides to just like, okay, I'm just leaving. You know, it didn't belong to the gas station. They're like, no, we just sell gas. We don't have dogs. What are you talking about? So she leaves. The dog is there, won't start barking, farts, right? Disgusting. This dog is disgusting in every way, as fascists are. So she ends up putting on music to just try and drown it out. Maybe it'll stop. And she lands on this conservative talk radio station. And that is the thing, the one thing that makes this dog shut up. That is how we know this is a fascist dog, because this dog loves this radio station, right? And she calls it the MAGA dog, right? Which is perfect. And you even have Charlie kind of a cathartic moment where she's yelling at this fascist dog, which I appreciate as well. So anyway, she pulls up. She's tired of this dog shit. She pulls over, lets the dog out, right? Get out of here, dog. And it just so happens she pulled off the side of the road in front of the barbecue. The dog goes up on a table, starts eating people's food, causing all kinds of chaos. And of course, Taffy sees that the dog got out of Charlie's car. So Taffy's like, you owe us some money. You can't just let your dog go up and eat all this food off people's tables. And George, being the sweetheart he is, he's like, listen, you work for us for a night. It'll clear you. If you want some extra cash, you can work here for a while, right? And of course, Charlie, obviously not having money to pay off what the dog just ate, but also probably in need of some under-the-table cash, decides that she will, take up George's offer, even though Taffy isn't too keen on the idea of it. But either way, she does it. And George takes her on a tour, gives her the rundown of what the barbecue is. Like, this is Texas barbecue, so it's all cow. That's what we cook here. And he's talking about the different types of wood that he uses and how long it takes and all that kind of stuff, right? Just showing her the smells and the taste of the wood. and talking about the part of the process in cooking brisket called the stall, which is obviously the name of this episode and something that plays into the finale of this episode, the conclusion of this episode. But the stall in brisket is where the alchemy takes place, he says. It's that moment where it gets up to temperature, where it just kind of sits and all the things kind of mix within it and make it taste really amazing, right? And then she asks him about the floss, right? And calls George's bullshit when he says he likes the floss. Like, clearly he's not a fan of the floss because he puts all this time and effort into making this delicious meat, right? It's his art form to make the perfect meat, and the process and the wood. He's just like so into every small detail, and he hates the fact that everybody that eats there leaves with this artificially flavored cinnamon dental floss, right? He refers to it as using an air horn at a symphony, right? He's got this high-end flavor experience with his barbecue, and everybody leaves the barbecue putting in this artificially flavored bullshit dental floss, right? Which is a good promotional idea, but definitely agree with George as far as it being a air horn at a symphony. So George, right, has a lot of respect for the animals, right? Talks about how he likes to use every piece of the animal, shows what he's smoking at his personal smoker by his trailer, which made my stomach growl, literally just made my stomach growl right now. He opens it up and he's got like 5 beef tongues, which it's been forever since I've had beef tongue. It is absolutely delicious. And to see him smoking that after, this is him showing that he uses every part of the cow when he makes the different types of food. Looks so delicious. And then tells her that he uses this special pecan wood to smoke the beef tongue, right? And also tells her that his wife lives in town, at the house in town. He likes to stay at the trailer, which is very kind of a weird living situation when you're married. I mean, it's one thing to be married and sleeping in separate beds or sleeping in separate rooms, which I'm sure happens. Seems like probably a good idea on some level, having a little bit of your own space at times, especially I'm sure if you're married for a long time. But to live in a completely different place, right? Work together, which I guess maybe that works because they see each other every day at work. But regardless, he likes it. He likes having the peace. Charlie's like, well, you must get bored out here alone. And so she's like, here, I got some DVDs you can check out. So she takes them over to her trunk, going through different DVDs. She pulls out one movie. She's like, Okja. I started watching this. Seems pretty good. And gave it to him. That ends up being the movie that he watches, which is a good movie. Bong Joon-ho movie, the director of Parasite, also of The Host, and many other movies. Great director. Okja, sweet movie. Probably not my favorite. I did a top 5 of Bong Joon-ho's films, months and months ago, and I don't know if that made my top 5 list of his, but definitely a good movie, and a movie that would make sense that if George watched the movie, that he would maybe have a change of heart and maybe not want to cook meat anymore, because it's like this fictional history where this company is genetically engineering these animals to be the new kind of cattle that will be feeding people, right? So they are animals specifically created and genetically engineered in order to produce meat for people. And in this movie, you see the girl who's one of the people that's helping to raise this animal has a bond with it. You see these animal rights activists trying to save it. It is definitely a movie about animal rights, and kind of the shows you how because we are so detached from the meat we eat and we don't even consider them to be living things. There's the connection. We didn't even call them by the type of animal they are. We don't say we're eating cow. We say that we're eating beef, right? So anyway, watching that movie is the thing that made George change his mind, right? And I'm sure probably, I would imagine, if I had to guess, if I had to put money on a guess as an assumption, that this episode is probably the episode where if there were right-wing people watching this show, not only with the fascist dog and Charlie talking shit to this fascist dog who loves all of the things that right-wing people would love, but also the fact that George would all of a sudden become a vegan, right? This is a very progressive, woke episode, and I would imagine would have been the episode that people who politically on that spectrum land in the right-wing category. This episode probably made them want to run to their safe space. Oh, you have this guy, they were talking shit out loud about George having an electric car. They were probably hurt. Their feelings were hurt where Charlie was talking shit to the fascist dog, right? And even more hurt their feelings to find out that somebody who made barbecue decided to become a vegan, right? It's just all of the things to make the fascist snowflakes melt and want to run to their safe spaces, right? So anyway, kind of an interesting thing, because I did see people criticize this show about how, they watched a few episodes and then couldn't watch it anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was the episode that made a lot of people of that persuasion, these fragile people of that persuasion, to turn it off. But anyway, cut to what we saw in the beginning of the episode with George crying, right? The next morning, seeing him open, how it opens, seeing that it was Charlie's voice that asks him, and he says that he's a murderer, clearly not a murderer of people, somebody who considers himself a murderer of animals, and he took those things from that movie to heart. And George tells Charlie about telling Taffy that he's done with the business, right? And he asks her what life is like on the road, that romantic idea of being on the road, where for Charlie, it's the only survival option she has. She can't settle down because she is constantly on the run from Cliff and from the casino owner from the first episode. So obviously she doesn't mention that, but she tries to give him talk it up in some ways. A life of fresh starts, as each episode of the show is a new story in Charlie's journey across the country. And George is about to tell Charlie about the quote unquote one thing he knows about this new life, right? Because he's not scared necessarily. And she asks him, and he's like, "Oh, there's one thing I know," but then he doesn't answer because Charlie's being called to go to work because she obviously has to pay off her debts. So George is like, "I'll tell you later," right? "I'll tell you after work." Cut to later that night. Charlie's struggling to keep up as the restaurant's busy. Taffy comes back from the broadcast, as we saw earlier. He burns the evidence. Charlie notices Mandy asking another employee to ask George where a specific spice is, right? Notices a little lie there, probably. And that's employee, when he goes to George's trailer, discovers his body, the smoke billowing out of the trailer door as he opens it up, right? Full of that pecan wood. Then the next day, Taffy and Mandy announce that they're going to keep the barbecue going because that's what George would have wanted. And of course, Charlie, not only because she has her special ability of calling bullshit, but also having just talked to George about him leaving and why he's leaving, and obviously Taffy would know why he's leaving as well, would also know that it's bullshit, that George is leaving because he doesn't believe in the restaurant anymore, and I'm sure would not want it to keep going. But because we clearly know what Taffy's desires are, and Mandy's desires are, as she was clearly helping on some level with Taffy getting this thing done. Charlie calls bullshit, and right, as the audience, we know because he saw Okja. Okja changed his mind, which is kind of a crazy reference. Like, Okja is a Netflix original film. This is a Peacock original show. So Okja, not like a movie. I don't think it ever gotten, like, it's a movie that people not only would only know if they have Netflix, but would only know if they watched. Like, it's kind of obscure. It's kind of an obscure reference. But I appreciate it, though, because I'm a huge fan of Bong Joon-ho. So Charlie tells the employee who found George that she's probably going to leave, right? The one person that she kind of had a connection with, whatever. He's no longer there, so it's like, I got to hit the road. I can't be hanging out for too long. Although she doesn't quite buy that George would kill himself, right? The employee tells her that the sheriff confirmed it. The door was even locked from the inside. The windows were all closed, right? All signs point to him doing it, but Charlie doesn't buy it. Specifically because he told her, I'll tell you that one thing later. And when he said that, he wasn't lying, right? When he said that, in that moment at least, he wasn't planning on killing himself, which obviously he could have changed his mind. But that is the one thing that's making Charlie go, well, that doesn't add up. That's one. It starts with one small thing that doesn't add up, and that leads her to uncovering the why. Not that it is, but the why. Noticing that Mandy lied about this spice. That's a weird thing to lie. Why would she do that? So as Charlie leaves, she sees the dog on the side of the road, right? Goes to look at the dog. Seems dead. She goes to touch it. Dog bites her. Clearly not dead. Dog still fascist, still an asshole, but Charlie has a heart. Takes it to the vet to get fixed up. And she finds out the dog wasn't hit by a car, even though it was on the side of the road, that it was beaten with wood. And Charlie, after having taste tested and smelled all the different kinds of woods that were around there, decides to eat the wood. And hilarious when the vet looks over and says, what the fuck is she doing? Right? It's an absolutely hilarious scene, because it is. She grabs this wood that was in the dog, and she goes to taste it. And of course, that is enough to get Charlie on the case. She's like, these are too many things that aren't adding up, right? It's just, she can't help herself. It nags at her. She's got to figure it out. She has to know the why. Why are these people lying about this stupid stuff? Who beat this dog? I mean, obviously, I'm sure Charlie can think of a lot of reasons why somebody would want to silence the dog. I'm sure on some level she's, wasn't awfully torn up about this dog being almost dead, but still she has a heart. So she goes back, she starts tasting all the different woods that are around the restaurant, trying to find the match, right? Which we know that's a specific wood that's by his trailer that he was using for the beef tongue, right? So she finally gets to the wood that is by George's trailer, tastes it. This is a match. She looks inside where the wood was on fire for the smoker. I don't know what they call that part of the smoker. Looks inside. She finds the dog tooth that was ripped out when the dog was beaten. So she finds the dog tooth. She finds the wood. She's like, okay. She's on a trail. And then Taffy runs into Charlie, and Charlie's asking him some questions. She wants to know what's going on. She asks him when he last saw the fascist dog, right? Because that's kind of the one thing she's trying to solve. Like, what is, like, the stuff with George is weird, but that's not her main focus right now. She's like, what? Why would somebody beat this dog with a piece of wood and then put it by the street? So she's asking Taffy about the dog, when he last saw the dog. because that's the murder, the attempted murder she's trying to solve, right? And she's hung up also on George saying that he would tell her something, and then when he said that, it was the truth. But of course, Taffy doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know she has this ability to tell the truth yet. But she knows that he, in that moment, wasn't planning on killing himself, right? And she calls bullshit when Taffy says that he would give up everything to have his brother back, right? And I think that's the first inkling that Taffy knows that, okay, she's clearly read him, knows that he was bullshit. She's like, oh, okay. Because some people are good at calling bullshit, that's for sure. She has the kind of the high level of accuracy. And then he tells her that she needs to get the fuck out of town, as people do in Texas that they don't like. It's high time you get out of here. We don't like your kind. Why don't you get out of here? She asks if the gun that's mounted on the wall is a real gun, is if it's just decorative. He's like, no, it's not really decorative, right? Clearly saying, listen, this works. I don't like you. Why don't you skedaddle? Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about Attention all Ray Taylor Show fans! We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show. So, the dog, as she's preparing to leave, the dog doesn't want her to leave. The dog ends up convincing her to leave, as the dog has this like bandage over his head. So Charlie decides to go over to George's trailer. She sees a map open on his table inside of California, right? Maybe a destination that he was thinking of heading to. And as she's in there, it's at night. She's got a lantern. Taffy sees that there's a light on at George's trailer. And Charlie smells the beer bottle, right? She smells the lock. And when she smells the lock, she can hear air horns go off. And she remembers that thing that George said, that the cinnamon dental floss is like air horns at a symphony. And she's smelling that cinnamon smell on the door lock. And in that moment, she gets out of there just in time as Taffy shows up to the trailer with his gun. But after she crawls out from under the trailer, she's met with Mandy, shines a flashlight in her face. And so Charlie tells her everything, including what her special ability is. Mandy throws out some stuff to test her accuracy at calling bullshit, right? And then tells her that Taffy has a solid alibi, just kind of offers up a defense for Taffy. Which is kind of an interesting thing, right? He was on the radio. Couldn't have been Taffy, as if Charlie had specifically thought it was Taffy. So it's kind of a bad move, right? One, implying that Taffy was a suspect, and kind of also giving Charlie another location to go sniff around, to go see what clues she can dig up at the radio station. So, of course, that is where Charlie goes. She goes to the radio station, and she finds out that the right-wing radio host that her dog absolutely loves is just a black dude who does a character because he knows that it's popular and he wants to be entertaining. And she finds out that he actually does all of the different personalities that populate this radio station, does all these kinds of different voices in addition to the right-wing conspiracy theorist guy, the fascist radio host, which is kind of a fun situation. And it's kind of sad how many entertainers, specifically comedians I've noticed, especially in the past few years, have really sold out to conservative audiences, right? They realize that there's a lot of money there, and they just need to lean into really basic stuff like racism in order to make them laugh. I mean, you see even the jokes that the right-wing politicians do, which are sad. The my pronouns or kiss my ass is like a popular joke for them, and their audiences eat it up. And it's just kind of sad, specifically with comedians that I've noticed. I used to be a big fan of comedy and followed a lot of comedians, subscribed to a lot of their podcasts, and over the pandemic, it is absolutely surprising how so many of them have just kind of followed the Joe Rogan path of leaning into being a conservative, which I'm sure is great for their ticket sales in certain parts of the country, and makes it writing so much easier. You don't have to. It's a lot easier to make fascists laugh at things. Just look at Dave Chappelle. I'm sure Dave Chappelle is very happy with his success, punching down at marginalized groups. So anyway, she asked the radio host if Taffy could have left while he was recording. He's like, no, I was sitting out front. He gave me some food. He was in here the whole time, as far as I know, right? Meanwhile, Mandy confronts Taffy about beating the dog. Like, why would you do that, right? Because now Charlie is hot on their tail. And, of course, now Taffy also knows that she has this ability. Charlie figures out that Taffy could have pre-recorded the sausage bit and snuck out, right? As she's telling Mandy, she doesn't think Mandy's involved, right? And then cut to Charlie testing, right? Mandy's like, hey, could he even have that? Like, that's 16 minutes. Is that even enough time? And then cut to Charlie testing out, like, as she's running from the radio station to the thing, pretending to beat the dog and do all the different things. She's like, yeah, I could have done it, right? And then she questions Mandy about knowing what to call in about, because who was like perfectly queued up to play this pre-recorded bit about the sausage. And, you know, Mandy's like, yeah, we do these things. We know what we're going to do, push products that we want to sell. So, yeah, we knew what I was going to call in about and just go talk to somebody that's eating it, right? So Charlie still doesn't have enough evidence to call the cops, to get the cops involved, really, right? Then Charlie remembers when Mandy asked about the seasoning, the missing spice, paprika or something like that, right? And had that employee go discover George's body, right? And that she knew it was a lie, but she didn't understand why. She knew where the spice was. She didn't think it was missing. And Mandy says she wanted him to find the spice, right? Which means she wanted him to discover the body. And again, Charlie gets another warning, this time from Mandy, that she should probably leave for her own safety. She should probably get out of here, right? Then you hear the hourly train go by, which earlier in the episode when she's going in on the radio, he mentions how this train comes by every hour. You can hear the train whistle on the hour every hour. It's like clockwork. And as she's leaving, she hears this train, right? So the next morning, Charlie decides to confront Taffy and lay it all out, right? She's figured it out. She's put all the pieces together. And she mentions that she sniffed the beer bottle and she didn't smell anything. Not that she could have smelled anything. She wouldn't know what to smell. What would the poison smell like? And why would he even use poison? He'd probably just use something like Ambien. But how would she know what Ambien smells like anyway? But it's not about what she smelled. It's about what she didn't smell. And what she didn't smell was beer. So she knew that the bottle had been washed out, right? And then she talks about the radio show, right? And she had listened to the radio show. She got a recording of the radio show from the other host, and she listened to it over and over again. And it's not what she heard on the recording. It's what she didn't hear in the recording. She didn't hear that train that goes by every hour, right? So that's how she knew that it was pre-recorded. It's not the presence of something. It's the lack of something that's giving her these clues, right? It's not about what's there. It's about what wasn't. The real proof, she says, right? And then cut to, we see the phone ring. Mandy answers the phone. And on the phone, it sounds like Taffy. We find out that it's a radio personality pretending to be Taffy, basically getting her to confess, right? Well, you shouldn't have killed the dog. You should have just stuck to our plan. We would have been fine, right? And all this evidence is being collected while Charlie is proceeding with the quote-unquote stall with Taffy. This is where all the alchemy happens, in the stall that Charlie is doing, stalling Taffy so she can collect this evidence. And as he's like, I'm tired of this, just get to the point, tell me what you know. And just at that point, cops show up. Mandy gets out of the cop car. There he is, officer. There he is. So Mandy's no problem just throwing Taffy under the bus, right? Just Charlie stalling Taffy long enough for the cops to show up. Because clearly, right, after that phone call, Mandy's like, oh shit, I got to do something. She knows the cop. She's like, she calls the cop preemptively. Listen, I think my husband or my brother-in-law is the one who killed George, right? He just confessed to me or whatever, right? Throwing him under the bus. She shows up with the cops to arrest Taffy, right? Her trying to avoid any kind of responsibility for it, right? And then, as you see the cops and Mandy driving Taffy to go book him in jail, right? They got the radio on, the right-wing personalities on there, talking about conspiracies, talking about how conspiracy has come home. We've got a conspiracy of our own, right? And then he plays the confession that he already recorded, that Mandy didn't know was being recorded. And as Mandy's sitting next to the cop, they're both listening to her confess to conspiring with Taffy to kill George. And she says shit, right? It's perfect end. A great kind of solving of the clues. It's not about what was there, it's about what was missing, right? And just after that, Charlie back on the road, no dog with her. That four-legged fascist stayed with her favorite person, the guy who is the right-wing radio personality, at least for a certain amount of time on the radio. So the dog found the perfect owner. Charlie is no longer having to deal and having to listen to the right-wing propaganda that gets spewed on the radio. So everybody is happy, right? And it's great. Just a smell can linger, proving the existence of bullshit even after it's been removed, right? Charlie sniffed out the truth, not by what she found, but what was missing. Right? She uncovered the truth behind George's death. She found a hate-filled dog, the perfect home with someone who needed the company, desperately needed the company. And she got to make some money while working at this barbecue. So all in all, win-win for her. And she's back on the road again, assumably heading east still, right? She started in Nevada, then New Mexico, now going through Texas. However, she did find George's map of California. Maybe that planted an idea in her head, like, maybe I should go to California. It's what George would have wanted, you know? Which wouldn't be a good thing. So we don't necessarily know. I guess we'll find out in the next episode to see where she is, to see if she's continuing east or decided to backtrack back to California. If she does decide to go back to California, obviously wouldn't be good because that is where Sarah from the last episode sent Cliff to get him off her trail for a bit, to sent him to California, sent him to L.A. specifically. So we'll see if that finding that California map changes the destination, the direction in which Charlie is going to be heading. But assuming she's staying on course, she's heading east. And the episode and all made me very hungry for beef tongue. So great episode, made me hungry. Fun episode. Solved it in a fun way. Next episode, next week, I'm going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 4, Rest in Metal, where Charlie goes on tour with a has-been metal band, Doxology. 3 X's in Doxology. It's a motley crew of dejected rockers who spent decades trying to write a new hit. They are a one-hit wonder. And Charlie suspects foul play when one musician winds up dead. So that is a wrap on this week's episode of the Poker Face Recap Podcast. Tune in next Tuesday for another recap of the latest episode. And join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform or over on youtube.com/inspireddisorder if you're watching these episodes. Until then, keep your poker face on and see you next week. No bullshit.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.